Hello, and welcome to another rambling video, which I'm making because I need to have something that goes up on the channel, and because I want to update you on what's happening, what I'm working on, and what to expect in the next month or two. Now, the footage I'll be using here, I'll talk about this more when I talk about +R and the matchup, is me versus the Get Good Man and one other player who both play Holy Order Soul, or Haas. The matchup is pretty good for Faust overall, and it's, not a particularly difficult matchup to play, I think. But it is a matchup that's very unforgiving because Haas's damage output and his aggression are both much, much higher than Faust. He has basically no ability to control neutral, but the damage and everything is extremely high. So, why am I making this video? Well, basically, as I'll talk about in a moment, there are a couple of longer-term projects I'm involved in, and those are things that I'm just focusing on with all of the spare time that I have. Given that I have a full-time job now, I don't have a ton of spare time, so I haven't been able to be as active on the channel as I want to, and I figured it'd be better to have a video like this rather than nothing. It's also really easy to make these videos, and that's nice because it means that I can just focus on making the video and saying what I want to say, rather than writing a script and going through the whole production cycle, compared to what I would have to do for a lot of other, well, for basically any other video. Even something very plain like my Street Fighter V guild video took a long time of script writing and revision and everything, just to make sure that I understood what I was talking about and what I wanted to say. So, I'll first start off with an update on my videos and everything else. If you pay attention to my other videos, you may have noticed that I mentioned I was collaborating with someone, and I can now safely say, and happily say, that that someone is That Blasted Salami, and Arya Tayebi, and his team, and everyone there. I'm working with Arya and a couple other people to make motion graphics and a script for a Guilty Gear Xrd character overview series, which is pretty similar to the video that made my channel famous for probably most of you, which is that video on Guilty Gear Xrd character overviews that I uploaded a couple years ago now. And this is aiming to be not like it's not correlating to anything like particular in Xrd's lifespan, but it's just meant to be like the definitive character overview video for Xrd. If you want to know about Xrd characters, if you want to see why people love them so much, or what is like really cool about the game, then these videos will be a way to do that. I'm also working on another video which technically has not been announced. The character overview videos were technically announced on Twitter, on That Blasted Salami's Twitter, like the channel Twitter page. So that's why I'm talking about them now. Normally I wouldn't announce something prior to it being announced by other people, because if you know me, I go for months at a time without saying anything, so it's no skin off my back. But I don't want to put other people into a position where they may be expected to do something, but it worked out this time. Anyway, the other video that I'm working on with them is going to be sort of a companion piece to that the character overview series, and I can't really go into any more detail, but it's going to be pretty good. I'm looking forward to it. So that should be happening ideally sometime in the next couple months. We're aiming for July as our target date for the overview videos, but obviously that's all subject to change. And it's funny because I was planning to spend a lot of time this weekend working on this video and the script and other things. Not this video, but like this video project, gathering footage and everything. But there was a windstorm, actually it was a thunderstorm a few days ago, and, well, a tree fell down into my backyard. It was a pretty small tree, it was only about 20 feet of the trunk, and it didn't like cause any property damage or anything. But I still had to spend a lot of time yesterday and a lot of time today, well, not today yet, but a lot of time yesterday and the day before, taking the, just cutting it down and handling it, trimming off the branches and everything. It's a surprising undertaking if you've never had something like that happen. But fortunately, nobody was actually hurt. So overall, I'm happy. Anyway, that's basically all I have to say about the videos. My longer term plans for other videos do include more sort of rambling things like this. This is a nice format where I just want to, if I want to just have an idea and just get it out there and kind of stimulate some discussion, which is mostly why I do these videos, is because I want to make the act of discussing fighting games a little bit better than it currently is. Because most fighting game videos are just clickbait, and I find that particularly uninteresting. So hopefully, even if I'm just doing videos like this, you can still get a pretty meaningful experience out of listening to them. Pardon me for the interruption there, someone was moving around in the house. And I didn't want any background noise to get in. The way I record these videos is literally just having OBS going and like recording me speaking into the microphone. So if there's something else happening, then it can be rather troublesome. I don't really want to edit them out or to edit these videos, because the whole point is that it's supposed to be simple, easy. I don't have to worry a lot about it. Anyway, I'll talk a little bit about +R now before getting into the other topics that I want to cover on this video. And that is to say, like, even when I'm playing against a character like Haas, normally I don't like playing against these rushdown characters, because it's just something I find stressful and I'm not good at it. But, like, the thing about this game is that it's so easy to find actual individual games that I don't really mind it, you know? Compared that to something like Street Fighter V, which is a game that I have been playing recently, but which I've now stopped playing. It seems like every modern fighting game gets worse and worse about actually just letting me play the game and fight people. +R is like almost no downtime. If I lose this round, or if I had lost this round, then it's maybe 2 or 3 seconds of watching a character outro animation. See, like there, right? Now I'd be back in the World Quick Play lobby, and then I would rematch this guy, and then he would accept, and then we'd go to character select, and then we'd load in. It's maybe like 15 seconds. Maybe, if you're both slow about it. Even before I started playing Street Fighter V, I was interested enough in the game to watch it and watch tournaments and so on. And I have to say, I really don't like live broadcasting for, like really for anything, but especially for games like SF5, because, like, again, as I said, it's 15 seconds of downtime in this, maybe. And in Street Fighter V, that downtime is like almost a full minute between games. You're going as efficiently as possible, right? You have 2 people in a battle lounge, which is like a player lobby, and you've got 1 person as the spectator, and that's it, right? But because of the way the lobbies are set up, it's impossible to have the spectator just remain as a spectator. And so instead you have the spectator, you have like player 1 and player 2 in the spectator. Player 1 wins, player 2 automatically gets shuffled down to the back of the lineup, and the spectator moves up to be the new player 2. So the spectator has to either manually wait for his timer to go back to the back of the line to time out, or go down himself, which is not good, because like you don't want to have your spectator, your tournament organizer, whatever, involved in that. You just want him to be like a passive observer. But that's Street Fighter V, and it's been that way for 6 years, and despite all of the improvements that have been made to the game, made to the battle balance and everything, the actual act of playing the game is still a huge pain. Which sucks, because if you have a game that just works, like, it just works, just friggin' works, just play the game, no nonsense, it just goes, you just don't have to think about it, then people will put up with all kinds of stuff in the game itself. Balance is sort of a nebulous thing. People have talked a lot about how to define balance in fighting games and what it actually means. I don't really care about balance too much. I just want to be able to play the game. That's the only thing I want. I'll play against characters like Haas, and I'll get beaten in by a big slab of concrete, Like, it's fine. As long as I can just play the game and feel like I'm still doing stuff or making decisions, then I can live with that. Unfortunately, Street Fighter V doesn't let me do that. It doesn't seem like King of Fighters 15 will let me do that. Tekken 7 definitely doesn't let people do that. Did you know that Tekken 7's get ready for the next battle screen that it shows behind every loading screen, or that it shows before every match, is not actually a loading screen? You might have thought it was a loading screen, but it's not. It's just a movie that just takes up time, and, like, it just wastes time, basically. So, like, it's really kind of impressive that, like, again, every major new fighting game, especially the Japanese ones, seems to have the same problem, which is that if you want to play the game, then that's fine, but you will have to put up with all of these really dumb decisions about the menus and the way things operate and everything. I'm going to pick on Street Fighter V a little bit more because I think it's the prime example for that, but even so, there are so many things just getting in the way of the experience. This isn't a new idea, as I said, people have talked about it before, but, like, man, I've been thinking about playing other games, or I've been thinking about branching out to Street Fighter V, right? Or I had been before I decided to get into it, and, like, actually buy it and take the plunge and everything. And then whenever I would go from Street Fighter V back to +R, I would think, man, +R is like a really stupid game with all these dumb mechanics, but at least I can play it. The time it takes for Street Fighter V to load, to boot up, and for me to configure my network fight card settings, I can get into a game in the quick play lobby in +R, and it just works. I don't have to worry about whether or not the game found a ranked opponent or anything. Like, it just works. And I keep saying that, but, like, it's true. It really just does work. There's no, like, secret to it. In Street Fighter V, there are all these things people try to do to get their ranked connections to be better, or their network connections to be better. I could have OTG'd Haas and killed him there, but I guess I missed my input or something. I was trying to go for the FRC and I missed it, and I didn't recognize that I had missed it. So now I get thrown. Haas's throw wall spots in the corner. Yeah, whatever. I forget exactly how this round goes, but it's pretty bad. I don't know why he did the burst in my face like that. That was not very good. And so whenever I think about wanting to get into a new fighting game, it's not simply the high cost of entry, like the literal dollar cost, which is expensive. It's not simply paying for season passes that have characters that I don't know about. Do you remember when people lambasted Street Fighter V for the silhouettes and for, like, just not telling people who would be in the game? And then every major fighting game just does that now? They just don't tell you what's going to be in the season pass that you're paying money for? Pretty crazy, huh? This industry, I swear. Anyway, I'll give you one more example of all the, like, menu stuff with Street Fighter V, because it's absolutely everywhere. Say that, you know, in +R, in Guilty Gear, when you select your character, you can select the stage and the music. In Street Fighter V, you select the stage, first of all, and then you select your character and your V system, but you don't select the music on the character select screen. Instead, you have to configure that beforehand in one of the options menus. Now, there are two options menus. There's a... Sorry, I'm going to feel good for myself for a bit. I wanted to go for the air throw here, but I got counter... Oh no, I was doing air to air jump K. This was supposed to be an air throw. I got counter hit jump H instead. And counter hit jump H is, like, such a fun button to hit. And so I get air combo, which is a black B, but, you know, whatever. That's his problem, not mine. End of the game. OTG after round hit, just to show you that I'm better. Love it. This is something I've noticed in Guilty Gear a lot. Like, not just +R, but even in XRD as well. Like, there's the... Like, pushback is such an integral part of the combo system that it, like, when you're beating pushback, when you're fighting against it and you do a combo despite the pushback, it feels really satisfying. Like this, I had barely any forward momentum going into this combo, right? It was jump KPK, jump KSH, which is like the most straightforward Gatling thing ever, right? But you saw earlier that the like jump K is like towards the end of its range. Jump P is almost not hitting at all. Jump S is well within its range, and then jump H is hitting him just on like the bottom of his feet on a small character that might have missed. Anyway, like that combo, I think I remember doing that combo because it felt really satisfying, because I could feel that the game was trying to make me like stop doing the combo with pushback, but I was still able to do it anyway. Speaking of things I'm not able to do, let's get back to configuring the music in Street Fighter V. So, being that music is a setting that happens in battle, and you have two options menus, one of which is called Options, one of which is called Battle Settings, you go to the Options menu, obviously. You idiot. Did you think it was the Battle Settings menu? No. So once you do that, you have... And it boggles the mind that this is how it works. You have 5... Like, imagine 5 rows, right? Like 5 items in a list going down. And the labels are music for ranked match, music for casual match, music for practice mode, music for battle lounge, and I think music for arcade mode. Not 100% sure. That might be 6. It's some like collection of that. There's also music for the main menu, but that's a bit of a different thing, because, you know, who cares about that? And if you want to change them, then instead of going to... Well, if you want to change them, say you want to change your ranked match music, and you want it to be different from your casual match music for some reason, you go to that item, and then you can scroll left or right, and you can choose from a list of a handful of things, right? Which is like character theme, stage theme, random, a selection of, or a custom selection. And like, the custom selection is just a list of every track in the game, except you can only choose like a handful of them, maybe 6 or 7. And you have to configure that individually for each of these options. So of the 100, 150 plus music tracks in Street Fighter V, if you really like one of them, then you'll have to manually add it for every one of those sound or music, every time that it could play. So if you want to hear Sagat's theme and Ryu's theme and Ken's theme, then you have to manually add those to the list for every one of those ranked match, casual match, battle lounge, and so on items. It's unbelievably bad. It's very, very dumb. Also, you might be thinking that, well, you can just go through every track in the game and select it, right? Like, what's the big deal? But you can't, because they play again. I don't know how you develop a video game like this. You would think that you would just have a list of things and you check things off, right? Like, you have a list and you filter it down to a sub-list, and then you just use that sub-list. Easy. But in Street Fighter V, when you select something, it gets added to the back of the list. So say you have every track in the game, and you select Ryu's theme, and now your custom music list is Ryu's theme. And then you select Ken's theme, and then you select Sagat's theme, and then you select Kami's theme. And it'll be Ryu, Ken, Sagat, Kami. In that order, and it will play in that order every time you're in a ranked match. So it's not really a random thing, because you're just going to hear like the first 2 every time. And if you want to move things around, then you can't move them around. Literally, you just can't. You have to remove an item. Say you wanted to take out Sagat's theme and move Kami's theme to the front. You would have to, not in your sublist, you'd have to go to the list of 150 tracks in the game, uncheck Sagat's, which removes him, which bumps Kami up 1 to the 3rd slot. And then if you wanted to move Kami's theme up to the 1st, so that you heard it first when you played a ranked match or whatever, you'd have to remove Ryu's theme, remove Ken's theme, which floats Kami's theme to the first one, and then you'd have to re-add Ryu's and re-add Ken's theme. Does this sound absurd? Yes, it does. Street Fighter V has been like this for 6 years. It's never getting fixed. Same thing with the battle lounges. So, enough bitching about Street Fighter V, right? But, like, you have to understand, every time that I play the game, something like this annoys me or bothers me, or is something I think about. In +R, you know, like, look at this right now, right? I sometimes have trouble telling my character apart from the background. I sometimes have trouble telling my opponent's character apart from the background. This stage, Phantom City, as you'll probably see, has, like, rubble in the front, in the foreground, but, like, in each corner. And it becomes transparent, but, like, it obscures the character's views. So there are all these things in the game that are, like, really annoying, but I can just pick a different stage if that bothers me, right? It's no big deal. In Street Fighter V, I have to interact with the menus all the time if I want to do anything. Anyway, I'm not gonna talk about that anymore. Oh, I guess there's one last thing I can say, which I have written down in my loose script document here, which is that Street Fighter V being bad, like as bad as I described it, for as long as I described it, is actually a pretty decent thing. It was probably the best thing to happen to like weird anime bullshit games that I like playing for a long time, because you had this huge influx of players who wanted to play Street Fighter 4, but Street Fighter 4 wasn't coming back, and Marvel 3 wasn't coming back, and so what did they have instead? Street Fighter 5 and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. How the mighty have fallen, eh? And so those people would actually try to play Guilty Gear instead, and that was pretty nice, because you could actually, like, have a conversation with them, and they wouldn't be instantly dismissing your game or the things that you like as garbage or not real fighting games or whatever. It's nice. There's a small part of me that wants Street Fighter 6 just to be as bad as Street Fighter 5, just so that people will actually step outside of their comfort zones and just not play like Street Fighter and Tekken and Mortal Kombat and just like that's it. Like, those are just the only fighting games that exist for a lot of people. But that would be a little bit spiteful even for me. So, next topic, which is me trying to branch out and sort of stimulate myself within +R and by picking up a different game and so on. So, I have enough mental room for 2 fighting games, and +R is one of them. It has been for the last year and a bit, and it probably will be until GGXrd gets rolled back sometime in, I don't know, 2350, sometime in the next 100 years. I'd like to try branching out and playing a different ground game. So now that I'm not playing Street Fighter V, and I haven't even mentioned all of Street Fighter V's performance problems, even when I'm playing on low spec mode, and everything like that, like, that's another kettle of fish. There's nothing like losing a round to a performance problem with, you know, even when you have a really high power graphics card like I do. So, there are other ground games that I could play, like King of Fighters, and yeah, basically I went through the whole gamut, the whole list of all the ground games I could play. A small correction here. I lost a bit of footage, so I'm just quickly re-recording this. What I meant to say here was essentially that I wanted to try branching out into King of Fighters as a ground game alternative, but previously I had had difficulty finding how to do combos in King of Fighters because I didn't understand the combo system. And in particular, the tutorial would do a lot of weird things, like it would tell you how to do special cancels and super cancels, and super max climax art, level 3 super special move cancels from your EX only level 2 super special move, climax special cancel super mode, whatever the hell, I don't know. And it would tell you how to do all that, but it wouldn't explain things like just doing combos and how to do basic combos. And I have a little bit more about that in a moment, but I just wanted to say I'm talking about King of Fighters now and my personal experience with King of Fighters 14. Because that's the one that I tried to get into, because that was the current one when I was playing offline with, you know, the one other guy in my scene who played King of Fighters. So I would take a character I liked into training mode, and I would try to do links from like close heavy punch to crouching jab, or like close heavy kick to something, to standing jab. And it just wouldn't work because the game's not built around that. And what it never tells you, or what it tells you very poorly, is that you're actually supposed to do sort of like a heavy normal into a command normal, and then you can special, and that's like a Gatling cancel, and then you can special cancel the command normal. So it's really just like doing Gatlings, which I know how to do. I've done lots of Gatlings. The issue is that, like, how am I supposed to... Like, the command normals by themselves are not special cancelable. So, because I don't play games usually where they have, like, strict cancel rules, I usually play, like, again, Airdashers where you can just special cancel and Gatling cancel everything. In, like... In a KOF-style game where you're actually trying to... where you're actually using the move differently, and it has different properties in different circumstances, that is extremely foreign to me. So I wasn't sure what to make of it. And that, like, initial awkwardness, plus the, you know, the general game's ugliness and my sort of inherent dislike of more plain martial arts games, made it so that I was not really having the fun with KOF that I was having with Guilty Gear, which at the time was Xrd. I've recently gone back to KOF 2002 UM, and I've tried to play more of that game and, like, get into it, and it's a really cool game and everything, but like it's a late stage King of Fighters game. There are like 50-something characters on the roster, and man, I don't know how any of them work except for like K-Dash, because he's basically just a Shoto. So I don't know. Also, like, team building is something I don't really like. I just prefer having complex characters instead of putting characters together. KOF's, like, team style is really strange to me. But that's, like, a fairly common complaint. It's not complaint. It's a fairly common issue that new players have. It's not, like, unique to me. I'm looking at myself to see what RNG I get. Oh yeah, lots of donuts. That's actually, like, not even that bad in this round. Sorry, tangent. Look at these donuts. Look at all these beautiful, beautiful donuts. I have basically no health when I do this first item super, and the Get Good man here is respecting the poison vials, because he should. And that lets me run up and collect these, and he just doesn't even want to deal with this. He just gets out of dodge. So I think, oh, okay, he's on the defensive. He's looking for a route in. I'll just mindlessly force break for absolutely no reason, because I'm stupid. And then I'll throw another item, it's a donut. Throw another item, it's poison. One more item, it's a donut. And he's being super, super passive here. And because he's being super passive, and because I threw donuts, he now has to do, like, a real combo in order to kill me. And I think that's pretty neat. It's one of the nice things I like about Faust. It's not, your health bar isn't set in stone. Anyway. King of Fighters. Really cool game, but I find it difficult to get into for the reasons I mentioned. Or I have found it difficult. The KOF 02 UM has like 40 people on Steam playing it. That's what I saw in the game, at least. So it's not like there's nobody to play with, but they're all probably really good. And I think that means a little bit more in a systems game like KOF. Whereas in Guilty Gear, if somebody's really good or really bad, you might still not know a matchup, and you might be able to explore that matchup or particular styles. Or particular styles of playing a matchup. I've fought, as you'll see later, the Get Good man is not the only Haas I've played against. He has a really distinct style compared to other Haas players, even though Haas is a one-dimensional aggro character. Also, I don't know how I went to time against Haas. I don't think that's ever happened before in human history. He's not a go-to-time character, but we did. We both get hit by the bomb, and I win. I think I literally had 1 pixel of health more than he did. Thank you, Doughnuts. So, if you've played like other SNK games, what I've told you about with KOF's 14's tutorial is probably nothing new, because you've probably played like Sam Show 2019 or KOF 15, which I think also probably have really bad tutorials. I know Sam Show 2019 has a bad tutorial. As in, not even that it's like it doesn't tell me stuff, but that as in it's just not fun. And it doesn't make the learning experience fun. It doesn't show me what the cool thing about the game is and what I can do. That's different from other games. But anyway, you might be wondering, why is it that I want to play a ground game instead of another Airdasher? Why am I not just playing, like, one of the other Airdashers that's gotten good rollback recently? That was the wrong key. Yeah, why am I not just playing, like, Under Night? Not Under Night. Why am I not just playing, like, BlazBlue or Them's Fightin' Herds, which is an Airdasher with good rollback? Why am I not playing, like, a weird fighting game, like a weird Fightcade game? Oh, there's also, what is it, Dengeki... I'm pretty sure it's Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax Ignition, the French-bred game that had, like, a fan rollback caster patched into it. It's also Melty Blood, the old game. And there's the new Melty Blood as well, which, from what I hear, has, like, not great, but, like, pretty decent rollback, or at least it had it patched in at some point. The reason for that is basically, as I said, I want to sort of branch out and try to get new things going on in my brain. I don't want everything I play to be like a high-velocity Airdasher, because Guilty Gear is that, right? I really like Guilty Gear more than basically every other Airdasher, and every other Airdasher I've tried to play has basically just been me looking for things that are like Guilty Gear and not finding them. So what I mean by that, and this is what I was talking about earlier when I said I would talk about Uni. Before the pandemic, my local fighting game scene was mostly just an Under Night scene, which was kind of unfortunate because I didn't really like Under Night that much, and it wasn't, I would have preferred to play Exerd because I love that. But everyone played Uni, so I had to learn how to play Uni. And as part of doing that, I grew to understand that, like, the things I took for granted in Exerd, like just the pace of the offense and the way the game is structured and everything, is not that, like, those are not consistent fundamental fighting game things. Also, I'm terrible at punishing DPs. Like, I don't know what it is. I'm just terrible at punishing this. I'm just really bad at it. Like, it sucks. I'm sorry. You're probably having a fit watching me try to punish this and getting close slash or whatever, but, like, oh my gosh. Anyway. House Hurt Box moment. I push 2P, I think, here? Yeah. House Hurt Box. Love to see it. Most of the rest of the other scene... So, okay, so the Guilty Gear Exit scene in my local community was including me. There were 4 guys who played it. The 4th only really half played it. He played everything. There were a handful of other people who would, like, dip into Guilty Gear, but they never really, like, seriously played it. I was trying to get a few new guys into it shortly before the pandemic happened, which was unfortunate, but, it was the pandemic, so whatever. Like, I can't really say that it's anyone's fault. Most of the rest of our scene played Under Night, which at the time was Unist, or Uni-Elst, like the version before Uniclear. I got fairly into it, actually, and I played it a lot, but as I grew more and more familiar with the mechanics and the way the game was paced, I began to dislike it more and more. So, one of the things that I like about Guilty Gear is that the game is extremely aggressive, and even a character like Faust is very aggressive in how he controls space. It's very distinct from, like, Street Fighter zoning, where you're just sitting there throwing projectiles at somebody. Whereas, like, in Guilty Gear, you always have the option to go in, and your reward for correct zoning is not just, like, resetting to neutral and just playing the good neutral, although sometimes it is, but your reward is usually trying to apply some kind of pressure or some kind of mix-up. The thing I like about being rewarded with mix-ups and pressure instead of just raw damage is that it makes it feel like the game is more about struggling for control over the match than just about doing the kind of gameplay that I uncharitably describe as walking back and forth and pushing medium kick. Because I think that's a lot of what Street Fighter is, unfortunately. It's just like, it's a really boring looking walk back and forth, push medium kick kind of thing. And, like, if you're really into it and you're really willing to learn all the hurt boxes and everything, then it's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I've had that experience in Street Fighter V plenty, and I have enjoyed it. And I've had it in other games too, but, like, Guilty Gear has that kind of gameplay, that kind of, like, being very mindful of ranges, doing stuff to bait out whiffs from your opponent and then whiff punishing. But in Street Fighter V, and in Street Fighter in general, it feels like everything is just about that. Like, that's the entire game, and that's all the neutral game. In Guilty Gear, there's so much else going on, and I like that because it really demands that you shift gears. But, like, you shift gears in, like, meaningful ways, you know? Sometimes I'll just do block strings like this. Like, he whiff punish, right? Like, the Street Fighter thing is like, oh, he whiff punish. I gotta do my optimal B and B. I gotta know that he was gonna do this. But there are so many variables to account for in Guilty Gear, and especially in Plus R, that, like, I saw that he whiffed it, and I just thought, oh my god, I need to get, like, a handle on the matchup. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if he's trying to throw me. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I just mashed, and then once I did the mash, I realized, okay, he's in block stun. I don't know what's going on. I just want him to get away from me. And so I did that. I did the Gatling into D, and then I jump canceled, and I thought, okay, I've put him on the defense. Now I'm going to go on the offense and do something. And he backs up because he doesn't know what I'm doing, right? So it feels like there's more decision-making. Sometimes in Street Fighter, it can feel very artificial, like, you know, you do something safe, you do something unsafe, you punish it, you don't. There's more than one way to whiff punish in this game, and whiff punishing with frame advantage, so to speak, is a lot more relevant. I would try to do that in Street Fighter V, and I noticed that, like, I was often just, like, not doing damage where I should be, because the game expects you to punish with damage rather than frame advantage, because of the way the offense is structured. Anyway, getting back to Uni, the way the offense is structured in that game is another thing that I really dislike. So, as I said, I like very aggressive games, partially because it's fun, but also partially because I'm just really bad at reading people. And so I like games where the offense is really high, like just simply the threat of offense is really powerful, and you force people to make decisions simply because the threat of the mix-up is enough to make them want to escape block stun. And that's true for a lot of fighting games, obviously. People hate blocking, but I think it's extremely true in Guilty Gear's case. Uni, by comparison, is the kind of game where you can... It's sort of the opposite, where, like, doing pressure is not an inherently good thing, simply because you put your opponent in block stun. I mean, like, it is generally good to do that, but Uni really rewards you for being in block stun more than any other game I've played, weirdly. You know, Uni, as I often like to say, is a game where you can win neutral by being in block stun for 15 seconds. Uni is a game where you can win neutral by dashing, by like dash blocking across the screen, like a quarter of the screen at a time, without exposing yourself for even a single frame. You can literally move forward while you're blocking in that game. It's not an exaggeration. If you're familiar with my Raven Dash video, I made a brief comparison to Uni, or I used Uni as a brief point of comparison there, because I was talking about how in Uni, dashes are treated as their own separate items, their own separate game actions, so you can buffer into them while you're in block stun, and then you can hold back after you buffer, and your character will run forward while you're in block stun, or you'll run forward while you're blocking. This is stupid, and this is why I will sometimes refer to games as like being dash block simulators, because if there's no recovery or startup or anything on a dash, if you don't have to commit to it, if you don't have to hold the button, because there are long periods of the initial dash momentum, then like you advance while blocking. Like, that's pretty good, bro. In Guilty Gear, because of the way that it works, you can dash block for short periods of time, but basically as long as you're moving forward, you are still holding forward, and therefore you cannot block. Uni's defense and offense are also like... Well, I guess before I talk about the defense and the offense, I should talk about a little bit more about what Uni actually is, for those of you who have not played it. As it doesn't really exist in the pandemic era because of the bad netcode. There's not even a rollback caster for it like there is for the old Melty Blood or for something like some old anime games. Uni is like, if you're familiar with French bread games like the new Melty Blood or the old Melty Blood, it's vaguely similar to that. You have ABC, it's a 3-button fighting game, and you have D for system mechanics. And the D button it's used for, well, it's not just used for defense, it's used for system mechanics. So you can, mostly what you use it for is for throw, which is A plus D, or for like the short hop air dash thing that it has, it's called Assault. which is just forward and D, either on the ground or in the air. And then you can also use shielding, which is just holding backwards in D, like either 1D or 4D. If you just do shielding by itself, it's called purple shielding, and instead you get a reduction in the block stun of what you're doing, or what you're blocking. And if you shield while you're blocking an attack, you get a green shield, which is slightly different. It's basically like you have to green shield like 2 attacks in a row in order for it to have the same effect as purple shielding once. This is intentional because they want you to commit to shielding. So the game is structured around the grid system, which is the little tug of war at the bottom of the screen. I'm not going to put up any footage on screen. You can look this up if you care. Like I said, no production values. I'm just talking into a microphone. So you have this little tug of war that's going on, and the more aggressive you are, the more unpredictable you are, the more you take risks, the less predictable your pressure is, that kind of thing, the more grid you get. And the more grid you get, the more likely it is that you'll win a Vorpal cycle. Vorpal happens every 17 seconds, and when you win that, you get a 10% damage boost, you get a character-specific buff, and you get access to chain shift. Little side note here. This is actually Faust instant overhead, and I did the combo properly here, but because of pushback, the standard going my way thing doesn't work. So I should have done Force Break Pogo, and that would have worked, and I think I probably just could have killed Haas here. Not 100% sure. Whatever. I take the round anyway. Back to Uni. So the game will actually punish you for doing... Well, it will give your opponent the tools to punish you for doing really bad offense. So sometimes when I'm playing Faust, you'll notice I just do some staggers, like I just do a little bit of block stun, some very slight delayed Gatlings, and then I'll end with like a special move or something. According to Uni, that kind of pressure is not good, because it can all be beaten by blocking. So therefore, I will not be allowed... So therefore, my opponent could just shield all of it. And when my opponent shields it, then he gets a big boost in the grid tug of war, and I lose the grid tug of war, basically. With the, the implication being like, run better pressure. Don't just do stuff that loses the shield, right? And like, that's true. Like, it's nice to see a mechanic that codifies that. But because throw beats shielding, and there aren't like a lot of fast overheads or jump cancel options in pressure, it's really just about the strike throw. And strike throw is like a fine metagame for a game to have, but I have to say I mostly prefer the kind of like high-powered set play that you'd find in a Guilty Gear game. Not because I think it's like superior or anything, I just prefer it. So, I hope that all kind of made sense and gave you like a brief idea of how Uni works. I'll try to find some more matches while I collect my thoughts and go into more detail. Another thing about Uni is that it inherits the standard French bread system of reverse Gatlings. So when you do like, so basically because you can cut your pressure short at any time and go for the throw reset, or go for the dash up and pressure reset, they really want you to do that. However, because of the way that the frame data works in the game, and because of the way that the recovery of moves works, I find that this is often not as effective as perhaps people seem to think it is. It might just be a problem with the character I played. I played Merkava, who's like this weird, like noodly armed kind of guy. He's like sort of a monster. And the thing is, like, people would say to me, well, if you're having trouble opening people up with Merkava, outside of his Okizeme game, because he does actually have some decent Okizeme and high-low mix-ups there, then just do, like, 4B, which is sort of this elbow attack, because that's only, like, -4 on block, which is, like, pretty good by Under Night standards. And I would think, okay, so if I do 4B, and I just let the move rock so that I can just act afterwards, if the attack makes contact, and then there's probably like a solid third of a second that my opponent and I are just sitting there staring at each other while I'm in recovery. So that's not good, because that's not ambiguous, right? I mentioned this in my Street Fighter V Gil video. You want things to be ambiguous. So okay, what's my other point? Like, what's the other thing that I can do off of 4B? Well, technically I could do anything, right? Like, I could Gatling into... Sorry, I could reverse beat into anything. But what would that accomplish? Like, I don't have any canned mix-ups in my normal attacks. I don't have anything that's, like, really threatening. So what do I do? And I kept thinking that, well, the answer must be something that I just don't get, right? Like, I must be capable of doing something. There must be something to this game that's not just run up and do strike throw, or go back to neutral and poke. Like, there's got to be something. And as I played more of it, and as I watched more of it, the answer was basically, unless you're playing a top tier, there isn't. So Unclear, which is the newest version, or Unclear. See, it's clearly the newest version because it's unclear. That version is generally pretty well balanced. Eunice was pretty stupid because one of the top tier set play characters, Seth, had like literal unblockables that he could just loop on people. And it wasn't like particularly difficult. And your options for dealing with that were really stupid, which is to say they were really limited. Basically, the equivalent of dead angle or guard cancel in Uni was grid thrust, which involved basically giving up your ability to use system mechanics for the next Vorpal cycle, for the next long time. And like the status you went into of being like penalized was the status that you would normally go into for having your shield called out by somebody's attack option. So it's like your option to escape from block stun is either just continue to block for like 10 seconds or whatever, or you can just go jump off a bridge, I guess. Like I really, the game is so focused around winning the Vorpal cycle that giving up your ability to do that is a huge, huge liability. Of course, if you've already won one, then you don't get grid broken. You don't like lose the ability to do that. You just give it up in that time. Whatever. The point is, the cycle of Uni's offense is supposed to be that you do this strike throw pressure, and if you're linear, then your opponent will just say, I'll sit here blocking. And so you give your opponent the Vorpal cycle and all the buff and like all the boosts and everything, which you don't want to. Or, if you're better at it, then you can keep going and you can make your opponent afraid to do that, and then you have the traditional fighting game offense. Side note, I'm going to switch to a different Holy Order Soul, or Haas, player now. He's much better than the Get Good Man. Not anything against the Get Good Man, but as you've noticed, he's kind of predictable. This Bobby Venture guy is a lot more aggressive and a lot more adaptable. So he plays the character completely differently, which took me a bit of time to adjust to. Also, he just beat me a lot, so whatever. Like, I'm not trying to cover for my ego here. Anyway, Uni. I'm really actually rambling here, because I'm just, like, all the things I hated about Uni and hated having to put up with for years, like, for, like, at least a year, because everybody in my scene played it, are just coming to the front now. But I'll try to follow my script and stick to the message. So, I'm not, like, you wouldn't necessarily think strike throw is, like, particularly bad pressure or anything. Like, you know, it's strike throw, whatever. Either you strike the guy or you throw him, like, you know how to deal with that. But Uni is a game where you have two defensive options, both of which are awful, which is to say shielding and guard thrust, grid thrust, except for extremely powerful throw tech or throw break option selects. All pressure is built around these option selects, and they are one of the earliest things that you learn how to do in the tutorial, aside from like basic commands. Another problem with the tutorial, honestly. How to put this? Basically, if you push the A button, so throw is A and D, right? But there's a bit of leniency for getting throw. So if somebody walks up to you and attempts to throw you, you can do A and then immediately press D. It's sort of like A plinking into D. And you will break a throw, but you'll get the A button if your opponent is not throwing you. So you can basically option select mashing and breaking a throw. I really love counter hit punishing Haas's explosion there. It's really satisfying. The issue is that you can combine those kinds of option selects to do anti-airs to beat your opponent's short hopping, and you can combine them with like a variety of other system mechanic options. I personally really don't like it when you have these kinds of systems that define pressure. I don't like combining defensive mechanics that solve different problems, so like mashing and throw breaking, anti-airing and throw breaking, shielding and throw breaking, and everything. I really don't like doing that because they're different, right? Like, why should they work the same? Why should they be usable at the same time? It's also, I find it also makes it difficult to tell when people are actually making decisions. Like, it sort of obscures it and makes it harder to tell. Like, you know, if you run up and throw and try to throw your opponent and you get your throw broken every single time, then like you might think, oh, this guy's like really mindful of the throw. But he's not really mindful of the throw. He's not paying any attention to you. He's just doing something that beats... He's combining two defensive mechanics that solve different problems, which force you, as the aggressor, to do something extremely specific to beat them. And so that's where the RPS comes in. It's not like the standard strike, stagger, throw pressure. It's more like strike, throw, stagger, option select. Which option select are you worried about? That kind of thing. I also find that it makes offense feel very stifling and very repetitive. Like, Uni at the time had like about 20 characters. I think it added one more since then. Most of these characters played the same offense, the same strike-throw offense. So there's like this huge differential between good characters at the top of the tier list, who were like, at the time, like Wagner, Seth, Batista, Yuzuriha, and I think Merkava? And like all the other bad characters, like Enkidu and Carmine and Chaos as well, I think. I'm pretty sure Chaos was pretty bad in Unist. Like, these characters really did not feel like they were doing stuff that the other characters could not. And it was... Well, whatever. I don't like it when there's like this huge gap, and you can very obviously see why the low-tier character is low-tier. Because he just doesn't have access to system mechanics, or doesn't have access to other things that the top tiers do. Because the top tiers just get to loop unblockables or whatever. And the low tiers just can't. You just have to play the strike throw game over and over and deal with all these options selects manually. I also don't like quote-unquote stupid mechanics or like bad mechanics that exist solely to beat option selects but which are otherwise useless. And what I mean by that is that if you felt that your opponent was, your hypothetical opponent, as I described earlier, was doing a lot of throw break option select combined with mashing, then what you could do is you could run up, and at the time you expected your opponent to do the mash throw break, you would just do like one of your A normals, like 5A or 2A or like 5B or something, and then cancel that into a throw. And it has the same system as BlazBlue, where you can cancel your attacks into throws, and if you do that, or sorry, if your opponent attempts to break a throw slightly before the throw actually appears, then you will get locked out of a throw. So you will, like, basically you will get you will do something bad, which is throwing your opponent out of block stun. Normally the break window on that is like almost a full second. It's extremely easy to react to. But because you thought that your opponent was going to do something else, you can do that and it'll just work. And it's not like a good thing, it just happens to beat that stupid thing that your opponent was doing. I don't like that because it doesn't feel like I'm playing against the player, it feels like I'm playing against the system mechanic. If I was playing against the player, then I would definitely not do stupid reactable things all the time. he says, throwing an item super, but item super is actually a very smart move. I'm really good at it. Anyway, like, I just don't like it where the system mechanics take priority over my opponent's decision making. Uni, as I mentioned earlier, also has a lot of like two-faced design philosophy. So, as I said, characters like Nanase struggle to do like really basic mix-ups. Like, she has some pretty decent cross-ups and whatever. She has this thing she can do where she like sort of floats into the air and she can control herself left and right. But aside from that, like, she plays the same basic strike throw as everyone else. Whereas characters, as I mentioned, can just actually do genuine set play and genuine okizeme. It makes no sense to me that a character like Orie, who is like a nun with a sword, can have this really good neutral game, these really good pokes, all these really good footsie options, in addition to like this incredibly good mix-up thing, where she literally just puts a giant orb on top of you, and that orb is like plus 107. You can do literally anything after that orb, and it's genuinely just a mix-up. Compare that orb to a character like Carmine, who is basically like a discount Eddie or discount Zato, who kills himself, like takes his own life to put stuff onto the screen so that he can apply block strings full of like mids and lows with no overhead. He has like one overhead option and one low option aside from the special moves, so, you know, what are you going to do, right? If you just block that, then if you're Carmine's opponent and you just block that, then he'll deal so much damage to himself that it's like you're hitting him even though he's making you block. One of the reasons why he's a low tier. And as I said earlier, Seth has an unblockable in Unist. I believe that he doesn't have it quite as much in Uniclear. He could loop that unblockable in Unist, and your only escape was to do the bad grid thrust, as I said. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like games that are like that, and it seems like that kind of offense is a lot more common in Airdashers than Guilty Gear's style of offense, which is small, low-risk reads mixed with larger reads. So, like, here's a perfect example, actually. I get a knockdown and I throw an item, and I see on the way up that that item is Mini Robo-Kai. And Mini Robo-Kai works in that he sort of falls down like this, like in this sort of arcing pattern. So I say, okay, well, Mini Robo-Kai is coming down, so he's going to help me put this Haas into block stun at some point. So I'm just going to make a decision based on that. A small read, right? So I go up and I just do a safe meaty stuff, yada yada, whatever. And I do low and I do 5D, right? Which is sort of a slow telegraphed overhead. But I figure my opponent is going to be looking at the mini Robo-Kai and thinking, oh, he's going to come down and hit me. I should just block the Robo-Kai. And so I go for a mix-up that is not great, but my opponent knows better, or perhaps he's just mindlessly mashing because he plays Haas, and people who play Haas just like to mindlessly mash. And so he mashes out, and he doesn't have to deal with this Robo-Kai at all. Or, well, he gets hit by it, but, like, he still gets a knockdown, right? Compare that to the other scenario where, or the other timeline where he decides to block. Sorry. Something happening in another room of the house. So compare that to another situation where the Haas player decides to block, and suddenly, like, that gives me more pressure, right? Like, these kinds of mental decisions aren't codified into the system mechanics of the game, they're just there. People often said that Uni is a game where you have good defense, and I don't think that's true. I think that's just a game where you have, like, really bad offense most of the time, so it's really easy to beat the most basic offense with option selects. So you feel like you have good offense, even though really what you're doing is just using the most basic possible options to do the most basic possible things. Some people will really like that, you know. Some people just prefer that, honestly. Personally, I don't. Little tangent here. This is what I was talking about with this player being more adaptable than the other one, or than the Good Man, because he sees that I have no life, and he sees that I have basically not very much tension. So he does rocket, rocket, and I think, oh, he's going to do rocket again, and Faust can actually low-profile crawl under rocket, so I do that, and I try to, and I mistime my 2K input, so I get counter hit. If I'd done that a little bit later, then I think I would have gone through it and hit him with 2K. See, that's the kind of decision-making that you don't get in Uni, because all of that is just shield fodder, and you could just shield all of it. To put it a little bit more clearly, and to make it more clear why I don't like Uni, basic option selects can deal with almost any kind of tick throw, so the game isn't actually about the tick throws, it's about rather baiting option selects and punishing them. I think this kind of sucks because it makes everything feel the same, and it robs me of my agency as a player, because there's like one correct way to do stuff, and if you're not doing it, then you're like just not playing the character, or not playing the game the correct way. And it makes it, it makes the balance between top tiers and low tiers more polarizing, because the top tiers just don't have to do this, and the low tiers do have to. Like, Haas is not a particularly good character in +R, right? But you look at this gameplay, you look at all that stuff he did to me in the corner, and you'd think, oh my god, he must be one of the best characters in the game. He's got a move that launches him like 3/4 of the way across the screen and is plus on block, which is rocket. How can that not be good? I mean, it is good. If you play the character well, you can overcome all sorts of bad matchups. This is also why I don't really like playing Airdashers like BlazBlue. I hate BlazBlue so much. I've talked way too much about Uni, but I could spend at least as much time talking about BlazBlue. Because a lot of BlazBlue's mechanical identity is just being like Guilty Gear, but different. And the things that I like about Guilty Gear are quote-unquote problems that were fixed in BlazBlue. So things like one-frame throws, things like having really strong offense and whatever, like that's something that was fixed. It was so nice of the developers to take out things that I like, right? But anyway, I think the main reason that I don't like BlazBlue is because of the same problem that I mentioned with Uni. Because BlazBlue is not a game where you can BlazBlue is a game where you can combine instant blocking, throw breaking, push blocking, and you can combine that with basically no penalty at all. Except there is a throw lockout window, like in Uni. But it's, like, again, you do the stupid thing, which is throwing your opponent at a block stun, and that beats the option select. It doesn't actually beat what your opponent was trying to do, it just beats the mindless day one thing that beats 90% of the options that you were doing on stagger pressure, right? And so if you're a top tier, or if you're a character with a good offense, your offense needs to beat push blocking, instant blocking, negating chip damage, and throw breaking. So anything that's good enough to beat all of that is extremely degenerate, and I don't like that, right? I just don't like it. What can I say? I'm going to wrap this video up around here, though, like maybe 1 or 2 more games. Yeah, so essentially, the things I like about Guilty Gear are basically only present in Guilty Gear, which is unfortunate, and when I try to find them in other Airdashers, I generally can't find them in other Airdashers. Now, for something like Faust, does it make sense that he should be able to do FAR-S 2K reverse Gatling? Does it make sense that he should be able to do 2H 5P reverse Gatling? Probably not. Like, that's probably really stupid. But, like, that kind of powerful option is nice to have. Like, it makes me feel smart when I do those things, even if they're not actually, like, quote-unquote balanced, right? So, like, if I'm trying to find... And I'm using Faust pokes as an example of, like, how Guilty Gear is kind of stupid. Because you wouldn't give that kind of frame advantage to a half-screen poke like Faust 2H. But it works, because, like, what's he gonna do, right? It doesn't really matter. And if he wants to be plus at closer ranges, he's got 5P and 2P, and 2K delay Gatling into 2P, which are like automatic frame traps and better plus frames, and also more ambiguous. So, that's why I wanted to try to play a more ground-based game like King of Fighters or Street Fighter V. And now that I've had these problems with Street Fighter V that have like finally gotten me to be way too annoyed with it to do anything, I have decided that I'm probably going to try to play King of Fighters. Or maybe I'll just play a different character in Plus R, because there are 25 characters, which basically means there are 25 games you can play. And I did pay for all 25 of them, not just one. In the meantime, though, feel free to leave a comment and ask for clarification on anything that I talked about. It does mean a lot to get comments from people, and I think I generally have a pretty high IQ discerning listener group or listener base. So if there's something that you weren't sure about or something that you disagree about, then please tell me. I do actually like reading comments, and it means a lot to me that people take the time to comment. Until next time, this has been Dragonfly, and hopefully the next time you hear from me, I am speaking with a much higher production value with a script, and I'm not just rambling into a microphone. Thanks for listening. Take care.